Hi, this is Ivey, the fulfillment artist, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to rebuild your life after you lose everything. Now if you're watching this video, you're obviously in a place where you've lost a lot in your life. I'm not sure if it's money, relationships, or whatever it is, but I'm very fortunate in that I get to work with some of the people that have been to the very top and have lost everything and are rebuilding themselves up, or at a stage where they've got a small business, they're expanding. But I work with people from all over the place, from relationships, money, business, everything. And I've even had the chance to work with someone that was a previous billionaire owner and lost everything. Okay, and you can only imagine the sort of circumstances that he went through, from owning private jets to mansions around the world to pretty much losing every single thing he owns apart from a little house. So the question is, how do you move forward and how do you rebuild everything? Well, through working with these clients, there are a few fundamental things that I want to be able to share with you that are going to be very helpful in sort of rebuilding yourself on this journey in a way where you don't have to waste a lot of time or many years in the dumps. Instead, you can sort of move out of it in a way that's much more sustainable. So with that, let's move on to the first thing to do. First is turn to gratitude. So you need to turn to gratitude of what are some of the things that you have in your life. So why is this so important? Well, when you're grateful, you can't be angry. And even though you've lost a lot, there's still things that you have. Okay, whether it's your health, whether it's some family, whether it's some friends, whether it's like a shelter, like food, whatever it is, there are still things to be grateful for. What happens is when we get to a certain point in our lives where we feel like we have so much and we feel that we lose it, what we do is we keep comparing. Okay, instead you've got to be grateful to what you have now. So think of maybe 5 things you're grateful for every single day. And if you're starting this off and something terrible's happened, I'd recommend writing down a list of 50 things that you're grateful for. Because then your mind is just going to actually look at everything that you have in your life instead of thinking in scarcity of what you don't have. The next thing is stop comparing. So what do I mean stop comparing? Stop comparing to what? Well, often when you've come from here and then you've moved down here, you compare your new sort of square 1 to your previous square like 185. And that's unrealistic. Because if you keep comparing yourself to where you were, then you're always going to be in battle with your old self. Instead, just compare your day to yesterday. And in smaller segments, instead of taking this huge chunk and this mammoth that you have to try and beat or better. So instead, just look into, okay, how can I move forward in a way that's sustainable and what progress am I making? Next, and this is really, really important, give yourself time off. So through working with a lot of business owners, when you lose everything, it becomes this sort of urge inside of you to do even more. And then you say, I don't deserve time off. I need to keep working and working and working. And it's so interesting to see that, some people have literally not had a day off in years since they've lost everything. Like literally years. So what I would suggest, I can't tell you how important this is just pick a time, whether it's a weekend or a day, and just have it completely off and do what you love. Whether it's surfing, horse riding, whether it's, mountain climbing, whatever it is. But just like rejuvenate yourself. What I found is when I get business owners to do this exercise, they come back rejuvenated with new ideas. They've realized they've been doing things wrong for months, and then they start doing something completely different. And that's purely from one day of space, right? And if you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll know the analogy I use of Thomas Edison, where he spends an hour fishing every single day, but he catches no fish. But it's so that he has that space to think creatively and think differently instead of being immersed in something where we feel that we have to focus and focus and focus. Because it's when we give ourselves that space that our mind can think creatively instead of just being focused on one thing. It allows us to look in different perspectives and perhaps be more open to what there is out there. Next is move out of a victim mindset and take responsibility. Now, this may not apply to you because I know there's a lot of business owners that take responsibility for what's happened. But for some people, we come into this victim mindset of, why does this always happen to me? And what happens is you just focus on yourself. Now, the way to get out of that is to focus on other people and take 100% responsibility for your life. So how can you take more responsibility for your life, you may ask? Well, the question is, if you can take 100% responsibility, say, you know what, it was my fault, even though I, didn't realize it was going to happen, I could have put things in place, I chose to, see that person, I chose to create a partnership with that person, and by taking that responsibility, it's a sort of you can move out of this victim, because when you're a victim, you're getting your needs met because you're saying, feel sorry for me. Why did this happen to me? And some people never let go of that and they become a victim for the rest of their life. So the way to move out of this is to take 100% responsibility and then start to move forward from that. Next is find your why. And this is so important because often when you've taken such a big hit, it's difficult for you to find out, I was doing so much contribution, there was so much I was giving, like, what can I do now? And that's where you want to find your why. Why is it so important for you to do this? Think of what motivated you to begin with, and then perhaps what can motivate you now with everything that you've learned. Like, how can you move forward in an even more directed way to have an even larger impact? Because this is the call for you to be smarter with your resources and seeing how big can you make that why? Because with a bigger why, then you'll be able to do much more. Because the truth is, you'll do more for other people than you would ever do for yourself. So you need to think about, okay, who are those people that I'm going to impact and how am I going to impact them and in what way? Next, lean on the people you love. Now, I can't tell you how important this is. The amount of, this is probably one of the most common things I work with. One of the most common things with business owners is because they get so used to dealing with everything themselves at the top. When it comes to like home life and relationships, they don't share anything, so they bottle everything up. And that's so difficult. So instead, you've got to be able to learn to lean on others and play a different role. You're not a business owner at home, right? Or with your friends. You can actually lean on them, tell them the issues you're facing, tell them your worries. And by sharing and leaning on them, it's going to allow you to express yourself, like let it out, maybe get some advice that you need and then move forward. And I can't tell you how important this is. You've got to be able to lean on others. Next is create your must habits. So previously, you would have had some certain things that you did every single day, and I imagine that you had very structured routine. And because things have disappeared, you don't have that routine in place. So instead, you have to make your must habits, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's seeing friends, whether it's like checking emails at a certain time, whether it's getting to work to a certain time, giving yourselves that work day, whatever it is, something needs to be in place to give you a routine. Because if you don't have a routine, what happens is you just sort of fall apart. And that's often what happens is that there's so many factors that affect it. The routine's gone, everything's gone. But as soon as you start to do the routine again, you're going to start to think differently and you're going to be able to move forward in a much more sustainable way because you've got those previous routines in place that allowed you to be successful in the first place. Now, in time, right, if this is recent, don't do this yet. But in time, these are some of the points I want you to look onto next. And that is reflect on the lessons. Okay, what were the lessons that you learned? And actually sit down and say, okay, well, what did I learn from this? And if you brainstorm and actually think about what you've learned, then you can really start to move forward with, okay, I will never do this again. These are the principles. I realized I made mistakes and I need to move forward. Now, the next thing is you've got to reflect on the patterns, okay? Were there any patterns that were repeating that have repeated before? Have you been successful and lost everything before? Like, how has it worked? And this is really, really key. If you can work out the pattern that you were running, because a lot of people self-sabotage, right? I remember reading, this is really fascinating. There was a brilliant person in the stock market. What would happen was he would make millions and then lose everything. And he'd make millions and then lose everything. Right? And this would happen time and time and time again, literally every 6 months. It was ridiculous. And his managers could not work out why this was. He had literally done this like 5, 6 times in a row, and they could literally tell when he was going to screw up. What would happen was, after diving into this, he felt that when he went home, he couldn't connect with his friends because he'd made so much money and they wouldn't treat him properly. So he had to lose everything. And then when he'd lose everything, they would then connect with him and he would connect on those common problems. That was a pattern he was running. So you've got to think about, okay, are there any patterns that I'm running? Do I feel unworthy? Am I feeling like, am I self-sabotaging in any way? Like, what things have happened? Like, do I trust people too easily? What is that pattern? And if you can work that out, or maybe there's a few, then you're going to be flying forward because you won't have that pattern repeating. Next, this is simple, cover your basic costs. Now, most of us don't think this, especially when you're pulling in millions and millions and millions, you don't think about basic costs. So what happens is you're often flamboyant with your money, even though instead you should just be aware and just cover the basic costs and then move forward from there and invest in the business instead of wasting money. And that's pretty simple. Just work out what you need to basically survive and then to then rebuild and move forward from there. Next is use your network. Now, this is a really important point, but is scary. And I've worked with people for a few months and it has been very difficult for them to reach out to their network. I mean, you can only imagine, if you're watching this, if you've experienced this, where, you're at the top, you're playing with the big guys, your jets, your parties, everything's there, to then reaching out to these people after you've taken a big hit. It's a very humbling thing to do, but it's very difficult. There's a lot of ego involved. However, if you can start to utilize your network, reach out to people, and actually start to utilize the contacts you have, you're going to start to be able to see opportunities that weren't there. Right? The truth is that everything that's happening is an internal battle. Right? Although there's a couple of external things, the major thing that people face during these circumstances is internal. If you can have the courage, right, and you've already got courage for everything that you've been through, but the courage to be able to move forward and actually reach out to these people, then you're going to be able to move forward in a much easier way because you already have the contacts. It's just about utilizing that network and actually reaching out and being honest. Next is get some support. So I can't tell you how important it would be to get someone, right, whether it's a coach, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a fulfillment artist, whatever it is, to help you through this. Because if you do this by yourself, you've just got your own mind. Sometimes you need people to pose questions to you and get someone that's very good that understands it, because you don't want someone that won't challenge you. I'm telling you now, I have worked with some people that are stupidly smart, like I mean ridiculous, and like the way in which they express themselves, and like if you can't pick up on those like little cues, because they know that they're not being completely honest with you, and if you don't have someone that can call that out, what happens is you just end up in the same place. You need someone that's good enough to pick you out on your own manipulations and what you're doing, because you may not even know it. You probably do, but other people won't pick up on it unless you work with someone that's an expert in that field. So make sure that you get someone good. Next is celebrate the small successes. So you've got to celebrate all the small things that happen along the way. Whether it's finally building in some passive income that you haven't had after a few months, whether it's, getting that 10th employee, right, after you've had thousands, whatever it is, we've got to celebrate these small successes as if it was brand new. Because if you can celebrate those small successes, that will give you that feeling of progress to keep following through, instead of getting down on yourself, not feeling that you can't move forward, and then getting upset. You've got to be able to celebrate those small wins. And the last thing is you've got to learn to forgive. You can keep, being angry at people, you can get stressed, you can blame people, but ultimately, if you can learn to forgive people when you're ready, right, and this is sort of the final step, if you can learn to forgive people, then you're going to be able to move forward in a much better way. But even deeper than that, you've got to be able to learn to forgive yourself. Because if you can learn to forgive yourself, then you can move forward in a way where you're not being angry at yourself, you're not putting yourself down, because the truth is you're your harshest critic and you know that. So forgive yourself, move forward in a sustainable way. I hope that I get to join you on the journey, whether it's through one of our programs or one of the seminars that we have. And with that, I hope that you have a spectacular week and can start rebuilding straight away. Thank you for listening.